Are we ready to get started? Okay, research questions in language education and applied linguistics, okay? The inspiration for this talk and for my interest in this topic is, for the most part, fairly recent, okay? So as a teacher educator, my day job is I'm a teacher, okay? But I do a lot of teacher education through TESOL affiliates like TESOL Arabia and things like that, okay? And in this journey as a teacher educator, I am often called on to mentor students, okay? Now, most of the students I mentor are undergraduate because I work in an undergraduate program, but I get lots of inquiries from students around the world who are in graduate programs in my area of specialty, which is language assessment. So I get a lot of interest in this. And one of the things they always ask me is, can you tell me what I should do my dissertation on? Really, can you choose my topic for me, basically? Of course, I can give recommendations, but not really. Research questions should be highly personal and interesting to you. So I'm often called on to help students choose their topic, but also to help them navigate the research process. A critical part, I feel, in mentoring people on the creation and development of good research questions is important. So when I first started my mentoring of students on this, I do what any academic does. I go to the literature because I want to use the literature to guide me. Now, a big surprise when I went to the literature on this topic, I didn't find much, really any. There were no books on writing good research questions. And I think, the research question is a critical part of research, right? We look at research as a 7-step process. There is choosing your topic. What step is that? For one. Well, can we review the 7 steps to the research process? So the first thing we do is we choose our topic. What do we do? 2, do our background or what's called secondary research. 3 is where we develop our research question and put forward any hypotheses that we might have with our research. 4 is where we collect data. This is where the primary research begins. 5, after we've collected the data, what do we do with it? We analyze it. And we take the results that we get in step 6 and we draw conclusions about our research. We look at our research question and we ask ourselves, did I answer my research question? And if so, what was the answer? If not, why not? We also compare our own results with those background results from step 2, and we see what our results add to the literature. And then the final step of the research process is presenting our results. And academics, we present our results usually in many different ways. For example, I present my results at many conferences. Have any of you been to a conference and presented anything? Yes. Okay. How about our students? Have we presented at conferences yet? Good. Okay. So what you should be doing now as students as well, not only in addition to doing research, you should be examining what you feel that you can give to others. You're going to be teacher educators, right? I'm assuming that's what the program is, right? Okay, so you need to be thinking about things that you feel comfortable and have enough expertise in to share with others. So that's one way to disseminate your results. A second way to disseminate your results is through print, through publication. Okay, so you're going to be responsible for both of those. Okay, so let's move on to this. When I was very surprised that I didn't find any literature to guide me on how to help. I found a few things which I'm going to share with you today, but I'm going to share also with you that White in 2013 pointed out this dearth of literature way back over 10 years ago. Basically, he put forward that the methods texts on research methods, for example, lacked information on how to formulate good research questions. And this was not only in methods text, but the wider academic literature. It was not only in education, but also it applied to the social sciences and to the humanities. So it was a widespread dearth of lack of literature on what I feel is an important topic. So what came next was a book that I co-edited with Hassan Mohebi, which many of your faculty members have contributed chapters to, okay? And I was informed that this book is in the library here? Okay, okay, I'm so happy to hear that. I wish I could send it to you, but it is a really big file because it has 885 pages. It's like this. It could be a doorstop. Okay, it's very heavy. It has 152 chapters, and it has, I think, a very unique chapter format. Okay, and the format is experts in the field were asked to do a short chapter, 2,500 to 3,500 words, and their chapter was on their field of specialty. They were asked to write, you know, maybe 750 words on the importance of the topic, what it was and the importance of the topic. And they were asked to think about, what do you feel are the 10 research questions that have yet to be answered about this topic? They provide 10 research questions. Then the last part, if you were recommending this topic, what are 5 resources that are extremely important that people consult? That's the chapter format. And there was so much interest in this. And I wish I had looked at the table of contents. I know I.C. Lee is here, right? I.C. Lee did, what's her field of specialty?
Courses, written corrective feedback.
Yes, written corrective feedback. I think that was the topic of hers.
And also Willie
did
also
reading, didn't he?
Extensive reading.
Extensive reading, yes, okay. There are other people from around Singapore at different institutions that also contributed. So the feedback on this book has been really good, okay? Because it introduces students, it helps you kind of cut through the field basically. And if you feel you have a topic that you're interested in, you can go straight to the source, a recognized expert in that field, and find out what research questions still are out there that need to be answered. So the purpose of this 5-year project, okay, was to assist early career or budding researchers in our field to be better prepared to ask important research questions, okay? To provide a practical discussion on the identification and development of researchable problems. And this, according to academia, was a cornerstone and precursor of a successful research effort. It's all about the research question. And it was also an attempt to kind of try to fill the gap in the literature on the importance of developing or framing research questions. And we wanted it to serve as a reference guide for students like yourselves who are at this important part or junction of your career in choosing your research question. And a stress reliever of sorts, because other research on research questions has pointed out that one of the most stressful things about doing research is coming up with an idea to do research on. Because remember, this idea, this question will frame, how many here are at the, do you call it a doctoral dissertation or thesis? What, because different parts of the world call the doctoral, in the US, we call it a doctoral dissertation. In the UK, it's a thesis. It's backwards. What do you call it here?
Thesis.
Thesis. Okay. So you're at the point in your program where you're going to do your your final bit of research, right? The prerequisite around the world of people doing doctorates is that they do a big research project, either called a thesis or a dissertation, and they add a piece of knowledge to the knowledge base of their profession. That's a prerequisite. Anybody who has doctor before their name, they have gone through this process. For me, it took about a year and a half. How long does it take in Singapore? This exercise. How long is the writing stage of your dissertation? About?
Candidates here are given 4 years to complete their studies,
Yeah, but that's including courses, right?
including everything.
Same with us. We have, in America, we have to take, well, at least in my day, Jackie is a more recent PhD graduate. In my day, we had to take 3 years of courses and then take our exams. And if we passed our exams, we became ABD. Anybody heard of that acronym? Here, you're going to learn a new acronym today. If you're ABD, it means all but dissertation. It means you've passed everything, so you can begin your dissertation, which you have another year or so to do. Oh, different programs. Is it still the same, Jackie?
It's still the same, and being ABD is often where people get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
They get to that point and they're stuck at ABD, and for many of the reasons Dr. Coombe just mentioned, it's the research. Maybe the research question wasn't strong enough, there's not enough literature, or they weren't passionate about it because their professor chose it for them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or they just simply run out of energy.
Yeah.
Lots of times, right?
True.
That won't be here with you. So basically a stress reliever is in a sense where if you don't know really what to do, you can look at the various ideas within this book and maybe something will resonate with you and you'll say, yeah, this is my topic. I consider myself lucky because in my doctoral program, we did one course in the summer after ABD, and it was, this is the process. And we had to choose a topic and write the first 3 chapters in 1 month. Okay? Sounds difficult. But I did it, and my professor said, yes, this is good. You've identified a gap in the literature. And, you know, I recommend that you do this topic. So, you know, I beefed everything up and I rewrote a lot, but the topic I chose at first was a topic that there was a gap in the literature. My doctoral advisor liked it. It was a testing topic, and it started the trajectory of my career of being a tester. Okay, and that really served me well over the past 35 years. So a stress reliever of sorts, because you can look at what the experts in the field say are the most important research questions that still need to be answered. So that was the purpose. Do we have any questions so far? Yes, doctor.
Maybe I can give you an anecdote
Please.
regarding how unique this project has been.
Mhm.
Because all the research papers, empirical papers, they have identified their research questions, but also they have answered them. So this is you don't know what else needs to be addressed in the research literature. Because that's why this project has been very useful.
Good. I'm glad you hear you because remember, you know, step 2, you know, research topic comes first, right? You know you want to do something. Does anybody have a research topic that they're considering? This nobody's making eye contact with me because you don't want to answer the question. Azrifa, you said you were in the dissertation or thesis phase?
Yeah, I'm analysis phase.
Oh, what's your topic in general?
Looking at the linguistics examination in Singapore.
Interesting. Okay. So high stakes examination, always a good topic, right? Always a controversial topic. Okay. So when you think of that topic, you do your secondary research. You know the difference between primary and secondary research? Learn research in that way. Primary research is a prerequisite of all dissertations, all doctorates, and it is where you collect data. Okay, the secondary research is Strangely enough, you do secondary research before you do primary research, because your secondary research informs you on what other people have done about your topic and helps you frame what comes in step 3, which is the development of the research questions for your individual research project. So this is what you were talking about as well, where you get information in the, sometimes journal articles have areas for future research based on the results of a certain study, a similar thing. Okay, so let's move on to what is a research question? Well, a research question in a simplistic definition is a question that guides and centers your research. It's the first critical step of doing any kind of scientific research. It guides whatever output you're going to be doing, whether it be a research paper, a project, or a more important output, a thesis or a dissertation. And it pinpoints exactly what you want to find out and gives your work a clear focus and purpose. Now, Dina Barai and Atta Gabriel, they liken or compare research questions to kind of a roadmap that shows you, the researcher, which path to follow to reach your destination, your outcome, and what resources you need to take with you. I really like this analogy of the roadmap. And to further that analogy, the roadmap can also help you plan for anything unexpected, okay, during the trip, and hopefully make your journey easier and follow through. Now, if we go back to Azrifa's topic, high stakes tests, the Singapore test. Now, one of the things we learn, especially in testers, I don't know if you've learned it yet, but oftentimes you've chosen a controversial topic, right? A high stakes test, okay? What do you do if your research question is, if you get the data doesn't, how shall I say it in a politically correct way, doesn't paint a high stakes test you're working on in a positive light? This is a big problem. You're laughing because you know that sometimes what we hypothesize isn't necessarily what comes out. And we're at a kind of a danger area, because obviously I'm where I live in Dubai. If I were to do research that would paint my students in a negative light, I don't think the directors of my college or the country would really like that. But as researchers, we have to be open to things. So one of the things with research questions is, if you feel that negative data coming from your research question could put you or your job in danger, then maybe you should, no matter how interested you are, you should find another question to answer. So you have to think of everything when you think of the research question. All right, so let's see. How important are research questions? Okay, according to Pohl and Lamport, they are the driving force behind the conduct of any research. And I like this quote as well. They are an attempt to tame this curiosity by not asking questions in a random or haphazard way, but in a way where we ask in relation to what is already known about the topic. It is essential to know what good research questions are and what is involved in writing them. A scholar who really influenced my writing of this book and also this presentation, Nasaji, he believes that good research questions are not just any question we ask, okay? They are clear, they are specific, they are goal-oriented queries related to a problem that needs to be addressed, and they are the soundness and appropriateness that determine the quality of the research. So literally, it all comes down to the research question, don't you think? So let's rewind a little bit and think about research question, okay? Now, when we do a research question, we want to think of a number of different things. What are your thoughts on that? What are some things you think you should take into consideration when developing a topic, when choosing a topic? Let's start there. That's so important, isn't it? Have you ever been involved in a topic you thought was really boring? I got an anecdote for you, okay? I did, in one of my early books, a colleague from the country I work in submitted a chapter for this book. And then he said to me after it was published, he said, my area of interest, I want to do a book and I want you to do the book with me because I want to introduce you to my area of interest like you introduce me to your area of interest. So I said, okay, because I'm always game if something sounds okay. And I don't want to tell you the name of the book because then you'll know who the colleague is. But okay, I'm going to tell you, task-based teaching and learning. I have 2 books on task-based teaching and learning. And these chapters, and famous people in the field, if any of you know task-based teaching and learning, the books are well respected, but literally reading these chapters that were all 8,000 words, and I truly feel an 8,000 word article is too much. I like 4,000 to 5,000. It was torture. Because first of all, I don't know, it was just torture. And then the first book came out, and then he said, we've been asked to write a second. Do you want to go with me? And I said, yes, of course, because I did it, but it literally was not a positive. Don't ever tell him, but it was not a positive experience. And I have never, ever presented on this topic, despite the fact that I have 2 books on the topic. Okay, so don't make that mistake. Certainly, if you do make that mistake and you realize I'm not really interested in this and I don't care about it, get out before it's too late. Okay, that's my good advice to you. But thank you. Interest is really important. What else is important when choosing a research topic or question? What do you think?
Yeah.
Is there a gap? Okay, this is a good point. Does there need to be a gap? Because, back in my day, I found a research gap, but that was 40 years ago. Now, the number, how many people in the world have a doctorate? Do you know the percentage? 3% of the world has a doctorate, okay? It sounds good, right? You're on your way to being part of that 3%. But the number of doctorates has increased incrementally. So there are more people doing doctorates, okay? And which means that the topics that used to be a dearth or a gap in no longer exist. So do you need to find something that's so totally obscure that nobody has done it? I don't think so. But you need to add something. You shouldn't just replicate somebody else's work. That will never be, would that be accepted as a dissertation topic, a replication study? Someone does the same thing as someone else and maybe changes it a bit. It's okay if you do research when you've gotten your doctorate, but a doctorate there should be some aspect of originality, but not necessarily a gap. If you found a gap, very lucky, because not lots of people find gaps these days, unless it's in some obscure topic. Anything else that you think needs to be taken into consideration?
Say, but this might be a bit ideal. Would say be build a little bit to the development of this field.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love that. Yes. Is it worth knowing, basically? Is it going to contribute to the development of your field or to the wider academic community? I think that's important. And if you manage to find a topic and draft a question or 2 about this topic, then that's a perfect research question. I think it's important. Now you're a doctoral student, be idealistic, okay? Anything else? Okay, so Nasaji further puts forward a number of essential elements, many of which you've already identified. Basically, he says good research questions are empirically testable. Lots of students, particularly at the undergrad, maybe you're past this, but I teach research methods to my students, and they come up with questions that are not really research questions. They're things you can Google. So a research question should not be Googleable. Okay, you should have to collect data in order to answer it. So it must be empirically testable and stated in a way that can be observed and measured. This is important. Now, good research questions need also to be feasible, given the time constraints you have, resources or the facilities that you require, and the skill set and expertise needed on the part of the researcher. So you need to think about all of these. A normal dissertation, is it about a year? Do you have 1 year? Write your dissertation? Or you said they have 4 years,
The 4 years, they need to do some courses
right?
in the write-up, I think 1 or 2 years, something like that.
Okay, so let's say you have 1 or 2 years for a dissertation. You know, you don't want to is it good to do a case study? Not that I'm against case studies or longitudinal studies. I'm not, you know what that kind of research is? Okay, is that a good intervention or data collection technique for, let's say, a doctoral student? You've got 2 years? Most longitudinal studies, you know, they want you to have longer than that. Case studies as well, if you want to have something that's generalizable. I feel that it's not possible to get a case study that's generalizable unless you do multiple case studies. So think about what you have time for, how long all phases are going to take, plan it out beforehand, and use that as well. Resources or facilities required. What types of resources do we really need to conduct research? What are your thoughts on resources you'll need?
Software programs for
Software.
data collection, eye tracking.
Yeah, you're lucky you have an eye tracking expert here, don't you? And you have eye tracking machine here. That's like, I mean, that's really good. Do you have access to, let's say, what's the most popular quantitative statistical program you use here? BSS. Do you have access to that? What about qualitative? Is it still in vivo? Or are there others now that are
People,
Is it available, accessible?
you?
if you apply, you can go there.
Okay, lucky you. Okay, so you've got that and that's a huge expense. What other resource might you need to conduct research? Need access to participants, yes. I'm gonna say I don't do a lot of research at my own institution with students because getting permission is next to impossible. I often collaborate with people from other institutions who have readily accepted like access to students. So I work with them and do research that way. Okay, let's see, what else do we need? We need participants, we need software. What about oftentimes if we're asking our participants to do something is longer, you know, not just take a survey, we want to offer them like a Snickers bar or, you know, a candy bar or something, or maybe a Starbucks gift card. So we have to have funding to buy that. Are there grants available for the doctoral students here? Conduct their research?
Would be a scholarship, I guess.
Well, I just came on the board of TURF. Do you know TURF? TESOL International Research Foundation. And we have grants, DDG, doctoral dissertation grants, that are given to people from all over the world. So check out TURF, TIRF.org or something. IRF, doctoral dissertation grants, where you can apply for some money and even be awarded that money. And there are lots of other places, like for you in testing, ETS has doctoral dissertation grants as well. So you should consider those kinds of things, okay? So the skill set and expertise needed. Like, do you have to be conversant in SPSS? Do a quantitative study using SPSS? You should have rudimentary knowledge, but oftentimes you should. What's more important, you know how to interpret your findings. So it's clearly acceptable to go and talk with somebody if you have a statistics department or a statistician to say, this is what I want to do. This is the data I want to collect and how I want to collect it. Will this get me these results? So before you do something without expert, knowledge, that's perfectly acceptable to do. So interest level, they're interesting not only to you, but to others in the field and the wider academic community. Interesting to you and interesting to everybody else is important. I have a person who I'm editor of the Asia TEFL Journal Brief Reports section, and I have a scholar from Iran who is a statistician. She sends me these, sure they're well written, articles on these highly obscure statistical procedures and what she uses them for, okay? So first of all, I don't understand them because I'm not a statistician. I try to get reviewers that will understand them. And even if I send them to people, they say, it sounds okay, but I don't know what she's talking about. And I know she is really interested in this, but she is going to have trouble getting published because she cannot bring her highly complicated statistical procedures down to the level of most of the readership of Asia TEFL Journal. So think about that as well. Right, so good research questions need to be theoretically, pedagogically, and empirically motivated and worthy of research. So I think you got all of those as a list. Well done. All right, what are the essential elements? Okay, and I'm going to talk about three sets of criteria that I found in the literature, and there's a little bit of overlap in each. So according to McCombs, research questions should be focused on a single topic or issue. Now, that does not mean to say that you won't have several sub-questions as well, but you should always be able to bring your topic back to one question. They should be researchable using primary and secondary sources. They should be feasible, taking into consideration that time frame you have and the practical constraints. They should be specific enough to answer thoroughly. They should be complex enough to develop an answer over a space of time, and they should be relevant to your field of study or specialization, or to the wider academic community and society at large. Now, the second criteria, or list of criteria, or framework, if you will, is through the acronym FINGER. Now, this acronym comes to us from Patino and Ferrara, and it is the criteria that all good research questions should meet. They should be feasible, interesting, novel, good for your career, ethical, and relevant. Now, this is a framework that's good for more general questions. The example that I gave you about collecting data, which rejects your positive hypothesis, is a research finding nonetheless, is the good for your career, okay? You don't want to take something and, you'll want to think twice before you put something out there that is, first of all, you can't really negate, like, let's say, an entire test just by one study. Okay, you want to make sure if you're going to portray something negative about that study, that test, which is widely accepted in Singapore, you're going to want to couch the language in such a way that this is just one study that points to this, further studies need to be conducted. So the FINGER criteria is good for general questions. One that is good for more specific research questions is the PICO framework. So the P is another acronym. The P in PICO stands for population of interest. So what population are you interested in studying, and are they accessible? The I is the intervention. You think about what intervention or data collection technique you could be using. Comparison, what are you comparing the intervention to? The outcome of interest, what do you intend to accomplish, improve, or affect with your research? And the final T is what is the appropriate follow-up time to assess your outcome? I personally feel that the first one, the more general one, is a little bit more interesting for me. So those are the two frameworks that I've come up with. I want to finish with the steps of writing or developing a research question. And this comes from an article that, do you know J.D. Brown? Are you familiar with the work of J.D. Brown? James Dean Brown? You should be, because he's really like a godlike creature that is in language testing and research methods. He's really produced lots of things. And one of my best professional experiences was working with JD on this book, okay? It's an edited book called The Cambridge Guide to Research in Second Language Teaching and Learning. For us, we feel that step one in developing a good research question is choose a broad topic that's of interest to you, the researcher, and to the wider or academic or professional community, okay? Then doing some preliminary or background reading, that's the secondary research, to find out about what other researchers before you have discovered about this topic, okay? Then based on this background research, narrow your topic down with consideration given to your intended audience for this. And then identify a practical or theoretical research problem that you will try to answer. Or do I have another slide? Yeah, one more. Determining whether this research question or problem should be answered. And you can do that by answering these questions. Can you study the problem or question? Do you have access to the research site or to the participants? Do you have the time, resources, and skills to carry out the problem? Should you study the problem or question? Does it advance knowledge? Will you contribute to the knowledge base of your field and to practice? And will your research fill a gap or void in the existing literature? So those are some topics to keep in mind. Right, I think I'm going to stop now before I go on to the second part, which is actually publication. So let's have some questions about research questions. Do you have any? Any comments, questions? Jackie, can I ask you to add anything that you believe is important when identifying research questions or developing them?
I think for me, something that, and I recently completed my doctorate, so something that I did was, I just started reading articles before I decided on my topic. I read articles, and my area of expertise is really in online learning, instructional design, for many topics. So this was before the pandemic. And one of the topics that I decided to focus on was persistence. Because I discovered that research shows students who enroll in online programs to not persist. They drop out because online learning is something you do autonomous, you do on your own. Without a professor there with you, you may not persist. So that led me through exactly what Dr. Coombe mentioned. We call it a rabbit hole. You find something and then you find something else, and then now you're in the middle of everything and there's just too much information. So I decided to focus on what are all the contributors to students who do not persist. And I focused on what does a student need to do, not the teachers, but what does a student need to do to persist. So if you've ever looked at Coursera, any of these online courses that people complete, they have very, very, very high attrition rates. So I decided to focus on that because there's a lot of money into it. The students pay a lot of money to enroll in an online course and they're failing. So why? And they're not failing because they're not smart. They're failing because they're not self-motivated. They're not good at managing their time, not good at being self-regulated and being self-directed. And then I decided to focus on self-direction in online learning, self-regulation in online learning, and self-efficacy in online learning. The belief that you can learn online. So once I decided on the constructs, it was very easy from there because I had something tangible. And I knew the terminology. Right? So then I focused on the terminology, but one of my best resources was librarian. So don't forget to include librarians into that equation when you are doing your research, because it can be so easy go off and look, if you've ever gone to Amazon, right? We shop on Amazon, and I might go to Amazon to look for a water bottle.
Mhm.
And now I'm on Amazon for 2 hours looking at hundreds of water bottles.
Yeah.
And I wasted my time. So a librarian is someone who comes in when you're doing your research early on, and he or she will ask you, okay, you want to buy a water bottle. What size are you looking for? How many ounces do you want it to hold?
Mhm.
Do you want it to keep your drink hot or cold or both? How much do you want to spend? So all the other questions that I may not have thought about. So you can waste a lot of time reading articles that have nothing to do with the constructs or the topic that you select. That would be my advice. My other piece of advice is using AI. We know that in academics or in education have two sides to using artificial intelligence. One side says, no, we don't want students using it because it's going to do their homework for them. And then we have another side that's saying, you know, actually AI can help you with your research. One AI tool that I love as a researcher, and I encourage my students to use it, it's called Chat PDF. Chat PDF. I use the free one. I don't believe in buying stuff. Now, I don't know if it's available here in Singapore, but Chat PDF, you can upload PDF to it and you can ask it questions. Who were the participants in this study? And it will just give you 1 or 2 lines. These are the participants. So if your research is more about your own context in Singapore,
Mhm.
you may not be interested in including a study from Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, USA, where I'm from. It may not be relevant to you. You can ask it what type of research method was used in this study. And then you can decide whether or not you want to invest your time in actually reading it. But I know my colleagues and we've probably wasted a lot of time reading articles because the title sounded good.
Mhm.
It seemed relevant, but once we got to the end of that article, we now read 8,000 words that we're never going to use.
Thing I always tell my students, because I did, okay, I'm gonna tell you too. I did a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate without a computer and internet. And all my students say in Arabic, mashallah. They say that because that means that's something amazing. Isn't it amazing to you? Have you ever been, no, I think you're of the digital native. Still use that thing, where you've never known life without a mobile phone, without the internet, etc. So I tell the story about when I needed to find sources for my topics, I went to the library. And doctoral students, we check out a lot of books, don't we? And I would bring my suitcase because I'd need, something to help me carry. And then I tell them, and yeah, back in those days, suitcases did not even have wheels on them. So I had to carry like this back to my house. So tools like this, so important because I can see students saving time on finding this kind of specific information by using ChatGPT, and I'm all for that. I'm all for things like that. So thank you for that. Have any of you Googled Chat PDF? I'm surprised nobody has Googled it yet to see if it exists here. Yes.
Christine, quick question.
Mhm.
The number of questions that you put forward for your study,
Mhm.
what's the general regulation, kind of the rule of thumb?
I would Google that, but I would think for me, did a purely quantitative dissertation, and my advisor said you should not go over 100 pages. You should do this in 100. Of course, I had
So-
250 because I put everything in the appendix. So for me, I'm thinking I had maybe 4. I had 1 research question and then 4 sub questions. Don't go overboard. Okay. The general rule of thumb is don't put everything you think might be interesting into your dissertation. I'm not saying do the minimum. I'm saying do what will answer your question. If your advisory team says, well, you should be checking this, then add it. Somebody told me your doctoral dissertation is not your life's work. It might seem like it's your life's work, but it's the piece of work you do. Add whatever you add to the knowledge base of the profession to get you that piece of paper that says PhD, then your real academic life starts with the publication of your dissertation. Or a couple of, I know Dr. Jacqueline has done a couple of articles from her dissertation. You should be planning that too. So don't overdo it. What I would do is I would Google how many research questions are in a typical humanities dissertation. That's what I would do. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So I was thinking that, so you mentioned that you have the time, resources, and skill to carry out the research. So I was thinking for novice researchers like us, before we conduct our experiment, and actually, especially experiment, the methods we use in this experiment is quite new to me. So I may not truly expect the exact time or skills or the resources I may use in this experiment because I'm still learning while I am doing this research. So this may meet some problems like that.
Predict how much time it will take and then double it. Your advisor will probably know more and they'll say, no, this is not enough time. Sorry, always plan for more because you never know what's going to happen. Jackie.
And I often found when collecting data from participants, I always had to extend the deadline because to get enough people to participate was really the hardest part. And I used a pre-test, post-test model. So many of them took the pre-test. They were all excited, but I needed the post-test data. And by that time, it was the end of the semester and they were students and it was just having to remind them. And I had to do a giveaway of gift cards and sorts of stuff to encourage them. And that was extra time that I had. And of course, you can't analyze anything until you have all the data. So that's why you've got to start early, build in time, identify who your participants are.
Good advice. Sorry?
Hi.
I'm finished? Okay, so I'm not going to go to publication, all right? You'll be able to see what I've talked about if you request the PowerPoint, okay? The last few slides are about what to do and what not to do, okay? For getting your first publication. Do any of you have any questions, maybe, about how to get started?
I have a question.
Tell me.
I'm currently a graduate student, and for now, is first whether to graduate with course. And I'm currently in that I have an interest, but and there are lots of things like how can I get from a job in the future? And to choose between desire and my life in the future.
Right.
So that is to say, if I cannot find the paper, but I really want to grab this chance. So I'm a little bit confused about to find.
Personally think if you're getting a doctorate, many people think doing the modules is easier. At the end of the day, they usually have to do a paper, which is a quarter of the size of the dissertation, like a 26,000 word something, right? 26 page, I'm not sure. I personally feel that to get the full value of a doctorate, you should do the dissertation. That's I don't know. What do you think, Jackie?
The dissertation was something like you, I was not looking forward to it because I knew how much time I'd have to commit to it. And I also knew many people who were ABD. They'd done everything and just didn't do the dissertation. So I did not want to be part of that group. Because the longer you let that go on, harder it becomes to finish it. So I think going back to the first thing Dr. Coombe said was pick a topic that you are passionate about. And if it's something like I'm passionate about student success in online learning. I believe that some people will only have an option to be an online learner. Maybe they live somewhere in a country that doesn't have education programs. Maybe they have young children, they can't leave them all the time or they have to work. So find a topic that really a passion for it and that you can have passion for it for a year or two.
And remember, what you choose is gonna be your specialty going into the field. So choosing the right specialty is important, okay? So think about that as well. I have so enjoyed my morning with you all. I wish you the best on whatever journey you're on. Our online participants, do they have any questions? No? Please thank them for their attention. And I know I'm doing a session for teachers. Can't remember the day. It should be on one of the posters. The 12th next week on assessment and online. Are students invited or is it just faculty?
Right, also.
Okay, if you want to learn more about assessing in digital and online context, I'll see you same time, same room on the 12th next week.